Well, I'd like to call this meeting of the Stockbridge Planning Board to order on July 6th, 6:30. Thank you all for joining. We're both in person and via Zoom. Glad to have you all with us. The first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the last meeting on June 15th. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I move we approve the meeting minutes as presented.
And there's a second. Is there any discussion about the minutes?
You look at me for a reason.
There was just a kind of a weird feeling that,
Something told me, yeah, I just have one minor change, and that is, Jennifer, where you have the comments of the various different board members, you've got Wayne, Carl, and my comments with our names, but the other comments don't have names attached.
Oh, you asked me to put your name in there.
I know, but I would also include, like, I think number 1 was Marie.
Yeah.
I think that Bill was number 2.
Okay.
And I think number 3 was Gary, just, you know.
okay,
That's my only change.
okay, that's a good one. Thank you.
That's okay with everybody?
Yes.
To check.
Yeah. Are there any other comments about the minutes?
Nope.
Hearing none, let's proceed to vote on them. Jennifer, would you call the roll, please?
Kate,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Nancy,
Abstain, I was not here.
okay. And Bill wasn't here either.
I abstain too.
Okay,
Aye.
Marie,
Aye.
Wayne,
Aye.
okay.
Carl? Aye.
Good.
Yes.
You moved your chair,
Are
okay.
we still gonna need to do that even though we're in person
And you can see.
and we can see?
Good question. I haven't asked Donna. I don't know what, are you doing roll call votes in the select board?
No.
You never have.
No,
I mean, there's,
You've always.
Zoom or no Zoom?
I don't think Maura Healy has ever called us and told us we're doing it wrong either.
Yeah,
Done it.
there is a faster way to do it. You can just say, "I Kate, I Carl, I Gary." Just go around and just
I don't see,
quickly do
we're
it.
being in person, why should it be any different than it ever was?
okay, I agree. We'll dispense with, calling the roll in the former fashion.
That's advice from Patrick White, not a lawyer.
I understand. I don't think we're going to get in terrible trouble if we stop doing it. So the second item on the agenda is to hear from our consultant, Jeff Lacey, who is sitting to our right. The audience is left.
You should come up to the table.
And
so
Jeff,
the phones are-
What you could perhaps do so that you can be seen is to, let's see.
Just move your.
We
chair
wanna
up
hear you.
to the
His chair right in front of
Yeah,
us.
he can sit right up in front of us.
Yeah.
Just look at the screen.
I have it. Okay.
There you go. Yeah. Good. Jeff was invited to this meeting in reaction to the comments that Marie, Vice Chair Marie, suggested we have at the last meeting to talk about what individual members of the board felt about Jeff's draft bylaw, Natural Resource and Historic Preservation zoning bylaw. We heard from everybody. My comments were read for me by Marie. I wasn't here. And I thought that it would be useful, given that there was a range of comments, both pro and con.
I'm sorry.
And
Tack, use my umbrella.
and some people felt more strongly about certain aspects of the bylaw than others. I thought it would be useful to have Jeff come. He's looked at the meeting on CTSB TV, so he's seen you speaking about the bylaw, and he's made some notes. I know he has some comments and observations, and I wanted to be able for Jeff to speak at length without interruption until we have an appropriate break, and then obviously we can have a conversation and we can go back and forth with Jeff and among ourselves. So, but I think it would be useful to, in the first instance, to let Jeff speak without interruption, and then we'll get back to interacting among ourselves. So, Jeff, welcome, and let's hear from you.
Okay.
Thank you for your work so far.
I have my limits extemporaneously, so you won't get a long soliloquy. But I have watched the meeting 3 times, watched and listened. Made a bunch of notes next to all of your names, trying to get the gist of what you were saying. And added to those notes during every pass through. And let's see, what else did I do? Because of some of these comments, I went back and looked at the Cottage Estate bylaw, where we left it back in, I don't know, maybe March, a while back. And checked that out and sent it around again today,
Yeah.
just so we'd all have it, because I know some of the comments have to do with that bylaw, even though we haven't worked on it in a while.
Right.
And I've also got the most recent NHRPZ.
FYI, Jeff, I wouldn't assume that everybody has looked at what you sent around today. I know I haven't.
No, I haven't read it either. I don't think any of us have, because it came late this afternoon.
Yeah.
I forwarded it just as a matter of information, but I don't think it's appropriate that we go through that document, because we're not prepared.
I'm going to reference it a little bit,
Yeah.
but not in any detail. But it just, I've been away for 5 days. It just occurred to me today, got back this morning, that I should probably get that back out again if we're going to talk about it at all. And then you can refamiliarize yourself with it. So based on your comments, I sort of distilled it down to 9 areas of concern. Some of them were expressed by one person or 2 or more. Some of the concern was expressed one way from one group of people, another way from another group of people. So here, let me just go through and I'll share with you what I thought these concerns were, and a brief reaction from me to the concerns. The first is in the NHRPZ, the issue of density neutrality or density negativity. And that was a decision that was arrived at by this planning board, to my understanding, at a meeting that I wasn't present at. Had I been present, I would have argued, I guess, or urged you not to make it density neutral, to make it density negative, which is the way it's designed to be, and has been in every other one of these bylaws that I've seen pass. That essentially is a form of grand bargain between landowners and developers in the town. And the town's interest in the landowners and developers' interests come together. The town gets a lot of conservation land. The town gets less density because it makes it a better design, and it makes it easier to get a lot of open space land with houses to account for. And landowners and developers get prompt and predictable permitting. They get formulas to work with, which they love, where you can calculate things out ahead of time based on formulas, simple mapped information, and you know for sure what you've got. It's not really a question of guesswork. They get design flexibility, and most importantly, they don't get a frontage requirement. They also don't get a lot size requirement either, but Title V pretty much determines the lot sizes in most areas without water or sewer. But they don't get a frontage requirement, a linear frontage requirement. You still, unless it's a shared driveway, you still have to connect to some road somehow to get out to it from these houses. But requiring 150, 200, 250, 300, sometimes 400 feet of frontage for a subdivision road is extremely costly. I think it's up to $300 a foot now. So for every foot of road you build, $300, costs a fortune. And you're building all that road just for two houses. Then you got to build another few hundred feet for the next two houses. So that kind of goes away. It doesn't mean you have to build a road, but it doesn't have to be as extensive a road. And I just realized what I forgot and left home. I had a couple of big poster boards I was going to bring tonight showing what I'm telling you about a subdivision and how a subdivision in Massachusetts is a road. You build a big, long road and you create as much road frontage as you possibly can. Area is not usually the limiting factor. The limiting factor is how you can arrange that road to get that frontage you need for as many units as possible. And that's the big cost of a subdivision. The road, the utilities that go along it, draining that road, all those things. So that's why these work best density negative. And that's why landowners and developers in towns that learn about this process support it. Even though they're getting less units, even though 60 to 80% is going into open space, it's still going to be an okay deal for them to build the roads to access these houses. So that's the grand bargain right there. And that's why if you alter that and make it density neutral, it becomes a development bonanza, like I once said. So I stick with that.
I just said you should have time to react. I mean, to say your thing without interruption, but I just remind all of us that what you're talking about is a draft of the bylaw. There's nothing set in stone. So that is one of the areas where we need to come together as a board and figure out what we want.
Yeah, we're on draft 6 right here, right now, dated 5/10/21, as far as I know.
And Jeff, I think it's important to note that there was no decision made at a planning board meeting regarding density neutral. It just happened.
Okay, I either get I heard about this meeting from the person that I was assigned to speak with, and it was conveyed to me that the planning board, by some kind of vote or decision, decided to go with density neutrality, which sort of means, 4 and 2 are your density divisors. And that's all I know about how that decision was reached. So I changed the bylaw to be that.
Right.
Yeah, I think we wanted to see what that would look like.
Yep. Okay. Okay, next one. I got 9 of them here. The NHRPZ, another decision that was made was to stop work on the CEE bylaw. That was back a number of months ago. I actually thought that was shaping up pretty well. I had incorporated it into the NHRPZ because I think it works better with NHRPZ, especially because you get open space as a part of the CE project and a conservation analysis process, a number of other processes, so it fits nicely. So I created it so it would tag at the end of the NHRPZ as section H. I thought it was going along pretty well, but that work was stopped. And again, I believe that was a vote of the planning board that decided to focus just on the NHRPZ and leave the CEE where it is, which is what I just sent you today, and which I think is a fairly well along draft. Okay. There were some comments that the existing cluster is fine. There are a whole bunch of shortcomings from that, for that bylaw that I've listed off before, but which I could go through later if anybody's interested or not. But the main reason it's working fine is it's never been used. And perhaps if you had some experience with it, you might know a little better how that thing really works. So that's my quip on that one. Next, NHRPZ is development friendly. A bunch of comments here. Excuse for greater density, Trojan horse, things like that. And I agree with that only if it's density neutral. It could be that way. There's some other aspects of it that could be tightened up as well. The ability to implement NHRPZ was discussed as something difficult for a board such as yourself. And I look around at you folks and you look like very competent people. I've worked with Massachusetts boards for 33 years and they come in all sizes and ability levels. And I don't have any doubt that you folks could do this. And the way it's done is something comes up, talk about it for a little while. Someone makes a motion that should take a course of action, accept something, reject something, get a second, deliberate for a while. The chair calls a vote, and you abide by what you voted for, and you're a 7-member board, so you never get biased, hopefully. So that's the way you do it. There's also another aspect of our state laws, Chapter 44, Section 53G, which is a provision for outside consultants. And that means that if you had subdivision was subject to this bylaw or a special permit that somebody sought to come under this bylaw, or a cottage or estate, the planning board could engage a consultant to help them with the zoning aspects, permitting of the zoning aspects of the project, and have the developer pay for it. So that's what that's in there for, and it applies to subdivisions and special permits already. And I don't know whether you've got that mentioned somewhere in your bylaw. I think you may have to either mention it or accept it.
Subdivision regulations.
I don't know.
It is.
Okay.
I think we have that in there.
Yeah. I might want to see if it's a special permit as well. But that's another aspect of the work I do. I help planning boards with regulatory review under this section. So I'm doing solar review for another town right now as a 4453G consultant. You get to pick, they pay. I or someone else you pick works for you. So, all right, next thing, waivers, exploitable. That I think was Kate's concerns about the waivers. Again, the waivers are granted only with a 2/3 vote of your board because it's a special permit. So 5 out of the 7 of you would have to agree on a waiver if you gave it, not just a simple majority. So it's a supermajority vote. You could also, if you're uncomfortable with the waivers, you could limit their applicability. And say there's certain areas that are off limits. We're not going to allow waivers in these areas.
I am uncomfortable with waivers. You know, you've got a town that is increasingly part-time, so you have fewer and fewer people to draw on for these boards, and there are implications with that.
Yep. The waivers, the waivers were put in the beginning, we added them because we feared takings, regulatory takings, because this was the farthest out you could possibly go in Massachusetts to protect land with zoning. That's what this is all about, protecting land with zoning. This is not about facilitating development or anything else. It's about protecting land, the NHRPZ, not the CEE, but this one. And we wanted some ability to wiggle in case we'd gone too far. And we were going to be challenged or sued or appealed. We wanted the ability to wiggle a little bit and get out of that. So that's why we added the waivers. We also felt that properties are so different and applicants and what they're proposing are so different that there could be a really good plan presented that somehow runs afoul of the regulations for one reason or another. And wouldn't it be nice if you had the flexibility to be able to waive it? Just that little thing, just waive that and let that plan go through that you liked so much instead of having to stick with what was written. Because their only recourse then is to go to the ZBA for a zoning variance and very difficult to get in Massachusetts. But those waivers, they can be dialed back. You could even change the waivers to make it a consensus vote. Every member has to agree on a waiver, whatever you're comfortable with. Micromanagement of siting. That can certainly be backed off of. We've got the rural siting principles. There's some wording in there that talks about siting of houses and driveways and things like that. If you don't want to get into that, don't want to review that, that can be pulled out. And really, it can be boiled down to a conservation analysis and findings that just determines two things. Where's that 80 or so percent open space going to go? And where's that 20 or so percent developed area going to go? And within that developed area, you don't micromanage. You just let them do the kind of project that they want to do. You don't worry about that, which way the streets orient or solar access or whether there's a green or a common or you just say, okay, here's your 20% sandbox, go play in it. Town has the 80% open space that it really wants to preserve. So you could simplify it down to that. Cottage estate bylaw unfair. I guess this was because certain properties would be able to utilize this and others wouldn't. And that kind of goes with the turf there because what the town is saying is these properties and landscapes and buildings are part of our history. They're really important. We want to save them. But what we need to do to save them is offer some incentives and some development opportunities to their owners, not just expecting them to save it because of the goodness of their heart, but save it because it makes economic sense. So we got to let them redevelop those properties. So we're going to offer them more opportunities than they might otherwise have if it was just vacant land but no estate. That's really what you're doing there. This is targeted to specific places and the town's going to get something. It's going to get the preservation of that landscape and that structure and that history. And the owner is going to be able to monetize that a little bit and make it worth their while to do that work. The last thing is long and complicated. These are detailed bylaws, both of them. But yours at how many pages? 6.5 pages is pretty short. Most of these are around 10 pages. Some of the things were taken out of here. The transfer of development rights was taken out. I believe the density bonus was taken out. This was put on a diet. There are some things in here about siting that don't necessarily have to be in there. If you decide you don't want to get too involved in citing individual residences and streetscapes and things, you can get out of that and probably cut a half a page out of here if you wanted to. But
just
by nature,
clarify, that was my comment.
yeah.
It's not that I want to cut out of the bylaw. It's just my observation of what the traffic can bear based on 9 years of experience on the planning board.
Mm-hmm.
What is realistic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
There are other helper documents that I've prepared that go along with this. One is a worksheet that enables, one is something that runs through every step of the permitting process here. It's like a checklist of what the step is, who does it, what the timeline is, and a place to check it off. So if you're doing a project, you can put it on that checklist and you know just what you've got to do, and you go boop, 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 down, and then you know who's supposed to be doing what. There's another one, it's a worksheet to calculate the, all the formulas. Looks like a IRS tax form where you start with figuring out the number of units, and then the amount of open space required, and then the residual developed land. And by the time you get to the bottom of the page, you know just about all the details, just by plugging and chugging numbers away that you get from that information. I have a few other of those things that I've developed for towns that help you as a board, and they also help the applicant, because you use them and you give them to the applicant as well. But this one's short. This is a pretty short one overall. So those are my prepared remarks for the 9 things that I noticed. And if I missed things that you folks said and want to say, I'd be happy to consider them and give you my reactions.
Good. Yeah, thank you. Comments, questions from anybody?
Why is it a building bonanza density neutral? What prompts that?
Because what I mentioned with the roads, the infrastructure. The utility lines, the roads, the drainage, it's all going to be significantly less. It's going to be for the amount of houses, a much cheaper project to construct. And that affects their bottom line.
Okay.
Greatly. And when they're calculating, in a and remember, this is a subdivision, and they're calculating the subdivision, how much they're going to pay that landowner. It often ends up per unit, but they've back calculated all those expenses of having to build roads to that unit and how much that's going to cost them. And that factors in what they'll pay a landowner per unit. So that's really it.
Are you saying, Jeff, that under a density negative formula, the developer or the owner could get a better price for his or her land?
I don't know about that. I don't know.
And I'm
about
missing
that.
your point about
Yeah.
the difference between negative and neutral. Did you get that?
I think I'm following. I think he's saying that it's less expensive for the developer to do the thing, therefore
Under which regime?
density.
Under neutral.
Negative.
Negative.
Negative, yeah, that's what I thought.
Boy, now I'm really confused.
The idea is that
Well,
Sorry.
No, it's
It's
neutral.
always less expensive.
And forgive me, but I mean, density negative versus density neutral. I'm a little late to this party, so
Yeah.
what does that mean?
it means that if you take a piece of land, and these are the drawings that I forgot to bring, sitting right in my mudroom, they're going to be there when I get back. I wish I had them. Conventional subdivision, you take 100 acres and you figure out how much road I can run through here and how long I can make that road go. Because there's no premium on making short roads. The premium is on making long roads. Long roads create more frontage. More frontage creates more lots. And so you may get a lot of lots, but you're going to build a hell of a lot of road to get to them. And
We used to have a 500-foot limit on subdivision roads, which has been ignored.
Driveway.
That's different.
Carl, density neutral would be, we're taking our R2 and our R4, and we're transferring it to this plan, so you'd be able to build the same number, in other words, neutral, you'd be able to
Right.
build the same number of units within this plan, but it would be structured differently.
Okay.
The negative would keep it at lower numbers than we have.
I see,
now.
okay,
your development costs would be much lower.
okay.
And that could attract development. And I don't get the feeling that's what you want to do. And I know another town that I worked with in the central part of the state, a little out east, that did it that way by mistake. A consultant set it up to be density neutral. And they're having a terrible time with it. They're not getting the results they want. Too many units crammed into a small area. They had to lower their open space percentage. So they're getting unsatisfying open space, just as many units as before in a lot of applications.
But if your goal is to save the open space and you save 50% of, otherwise the whole thing is used up with units. But if your goal is to save the land and you save 50% of the land, but you keep the same number of units, I don't see that. I mean, you're keeping a landowner still with what he has now. If his plan is to someday develop it, you're not harming that person. And you've saved 50% of the land. So if that's your goal, I don't see the downside.
A couple ways to go with that. Think about Stockbridge's density now. You know, what's your density now? How many, and that would be, how many housing units do you have divided by, the land area divided by housing units. I did that calculation for my town. What's your population?
1,800.
Oh, that's our population. And we're 17,000 acres. And I did that analysis when we were doing this in 2008. And our actual density is 1 unit per 21 acres. So we really have. That's what we're used to looking at. And we were zoned for 2 acres. So why would we want to have tenfold the density that we have now by zoning it that way?
Because you're saving the land. That's your primary purpose.
But you can do the same thing with less density. Because frankly, these numbers work against each other. The more units you have, the less open space you can preserve, and the more difficult the units are going to be to site. It's just the way that the numbers work out. You crank the open space up to 80%, and it needs to be, in order to work, it needs to be density negative. Because otherwise you're going to have too many houses on too little land, and you're not going to have enough room for septics and wells. So you got to make it work. The way I gave it to you first, it works at about an acre. 80% open space, density divisor of 5, 6, 4 for the other. That worked out to roughly an acre per house. That's a playing area of a football field. And that is enough for 4 bedrooms under Title V. Works comfortably. You don't have to get any special sewage treatment plants or grouped water systems or anything else. Everyone can have a well and a septic on a lot. You start messing with that, and your open space is going to drop. In order to keep that acre, your open space has to drop because the land's got to come from somewhere. And unless there's going to be packaged treatment plants for the sewage that the town Board of Health is going to approve, or community water supplies that the Board of Health is going to approve and have to be managed, which is all complicated stuff, and then you're depending on another board. It's not you. I set these things up so they work at about an acre or a little more. So anyway, that's the basic answer, is you're going to lose open space if you keep it density. And you may get premature development of things that you don't necessarily want to see developed right now, or maybe ever.
And this is a dumb question I keep wondering about. Is this an overlay on our existing, to 4 acre zoning, or is this replace it?
It is the zoning that attaches to a subdivision. in the
Okay.
R4 and the R2. So if you're subdividing,
Strictly for subdivisions?
yes, that's where it's required.
Okay.
That's where it becomes the zoning for subdivision. And all subdivisions have to follow whatever zoning is in place. Many times it's very simple, 2 acres, 4 acres, certain amount of frontage. Really simple. This is more complicated, but it is the zoning that applies to those subdivisions. The way it's set up, it can also be a special permit project for a non-subdivision proposal. So if you're not planning to subdivide, in other words, you're not going to put in a new road with new frontage, you're going to do it some other way, like off the street, then you can apply for a special permit to do it this way. And there are some stricter review criteria for you folks. That becomes more discretionary on your part, whether you're going to let them do that or not.
So if it's a non-subdivision and it goes to special permit, what are the implications of that? Because my understanding is that special permits involve enormous discretionary leeway. So how does that play out?
Well, this is still the zoning that they're under. And this zoning for a non-subdivision approval all applies, the waivers apply. But in the end, you're not granting subdivision approval. Your final approval is not a subdivision approval. Your final approval is a special permit. And it's a more discretionary process on your part in that you have greater ability to control, condition, or deny it.
Or approve it without any conditions at all?
That's your decision with it. If you don't think it needs conditions, you don't have to have them.
So what do you envision with, if it's not a subdivision, why would someone need special permission to do this configuration?
They need to come in, this is the kind of thing where you don't want people going out and trying to do it by right. It's way too complicated. And the planning board has decision-making powers in this. The most important one being the conservation analysis and findings that you folks make. That's the most important decision is that one. And you can do that under the subdivision because it's written into your subdivision regulations. But you also have to have a way of doing it if it's a non-subdivision. And the special permit is the best way to do that for your discretion.
Because the conservation analysis is not required otherwise.
It is required for a subdivision.
Right, but if it's not a subdivision, is my question. Why would someone need to apply for a special permit if it's not designated subdivision?
Because so much of what is in here needs sort of an umbrella of discretionary review. And the best way, in my opinion, to do that is through special permit. Because, you have notice to all the neighbors, you have a public hearing, everybody comes in and everybody knows about it. Planning board has the ability to condition it. There are some safeguards built in. So you can take less discretion and try to do it through a site plan review. But I would recommend that you stick with a special permit. And I've done myself 2 of those on our planning board. Both of ours have been special permits. We've approved both of them, but we worked long and hard on them and did a careful conservation analysis. We had some argumentation with the applicants. And, we eventually decided what we wanted to do and the planning board did it. The applicants didn't get exactly what they wanted, but they're very happy now.
Right, but you're a planner. You're on a planning board as a planner. That's quite different. You have that background and expertise.
You're just as tenacious.
Tenacious. Don't ever. Good comeback, though.
Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Kate, but I think that's an argument for a continuing role for a consultant on some kind of per diem or ad hoc consulting basis. I think we know of many towns our size and around our size that do have professional planners available, not just on an annual appropriation basis, but are in effect members of town staff.
Yeah, no, I know. I hear you. I mean, to get back to my comment about implementation, a planner once told me, the worst thing is when people come at it from an ideological standpoint. And yet that's what you frequently see, right? So, in terms of arriving at decisions.
You mean the members having it?
No, just generally speaking. I'm not talking about this board. I'm just talking about generally speaking. I think that's sort of the state of the country, period. There's a lot of polarization, and just as there's polarization at the national level, there is at the local level. Even Shutesbury must see that.
Oh, we have 5 solar farms proposed for our town all at once.
Right, so.
That's polarization.
I mean, as you see, there have been some decisions made without the input of the full planning board. So implementation is sort of a broad category when I bring that up.
But that's what elections are for, right?
Well, we also have state laws like open meeting law and, things like that. So yes, elections can deal with who's on the boards, but in the meantime, business really of such consequence, should really follow some of these state regulations and rules.
Are there other comments, questions from Marie or Barry, Nancy?
Not at the moment.
I have 3 things that I would want to ask about. One is monitoring of conservation restrictions. At present, I believe, I don't know if it's spelled out, but the assumption is that these go to the Conservation Commission for them to take care of maintaining the conservation restrictions and holding the conservation restrictions.
Well, it's whoever holds them.
Okay.
And that could be your local conservation commission. The one I own now is jointly monitored by the local conservation commission and the local land trust.
Okay.
And the Concom has kind of given it over to the land.
Yeah, because we have like 4 different organizations that, there is some land that the Conservation Commission presumably is in charge of.
Yeah.
There's also land that belongs to the Laurel Hill Association, which is our village improvement. Then there's Berkshire Natural Resources, which is the county-wide organization, and then the actual Stockbridge Land Trust.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of overlap and different levels of that. Anyway, that's not specifically spelled out. That's something that just could be worked out with individual.
I mean, I would say that Berkshire Natural Resources is probably the strongest because they're a dedicated nonprofit.
They probably have stewardship staff.
They have staff.
Yep.
And I have a chat comment here that from John Hart, who is on our Conservation Commission, that he has asked me to relay, if I may, Bill?
Go ahead.
He says, remember Tom Spencer, the Stockbridge developer. If this thing passes, he'll be back from California in a heartbeat. This whole, I'm not going to name the name, idea is a recipe to announce to the world of developers that Stockbridge is open for development. Newspaper coverage alone will lure them here. I'll bring that to the floor when comment time begins. I've got you, John.
I thought he was going to comment about the involvement of the Conservation Commission. I'd like to keep this to the board for now, comments and questions from the board before we go to comments from others. Marie, did you?
I was,
Or you had some other point.
Just a couple.
I'm still working on Carl's number one.
Oh, sorry.
So if it's going to be a conservation restriction, and that's the highest and best form of protection in Massachusetts. There are other ways to do it, which are listed, which you may have to resort to. But the applicant needs to find a holder for that conservation restriction. They could go to the Concom. They could go to the different land trusts. They can, if the state has some interest in, if you have a state forest, Stockbridge or something, they might interest the state in doing that. And the holder of the restriction will be doing the monitoring.
Okay.
On whatever basis they do. Usually there's a yearly visit. I get a yearly visit from.
So this
the land
needs,
trust.
okay, so, but it needs to be worked out. It's not automatic.
Right.
Going to the Conservation Commission or whatever.
But that's mostly an assignment for the applicant.
Yeah.
Because they have to find a holder.
Right.
And they may even have to contribute to this monitoring, set up a fund with the holder to do that.
And this is a technicality, but in this latest draft, and I've noticed in previous drafts, there's a little confusion. This is the cottage estate bylaw.
Yeah.
There's confusion between the Historic Commission and the Stockbridge Historic Preservation Commission, which are two different things. And I'm the chairman of the Stockbridge Historic Preservation Commission, so obviously I've got a little bit of a, I can speak to that. But, we just need to figure out, if we're still dealing with cottage era estates, trying to figure out what even qualifies, who makes those judgments. I think that needs to be dug into a little bit more specific, because right now it's a little confusing.
So which historic committee?
The Stockbridge Historic Commission is strictly a kind of an advisory group that keeps track of historic issues in town. And the Historic Preservation Commission was very specifically created to administer our demolition delay bylaw. And that's basically advisory to the planning board. And the idea was to have an organization that would, take the first steps of reviewing projects before weighing the planning board down with a whole bunch of, deliberations. And it's been working pretty well. So they're two different things.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know. I hesitate to sort of make generalizations about those different boards, but we do work in different ways, and no one wanted to deal with the demolition delay bylaw decisions, although it's proved not to be that difficult. Historic Commission didn't want to deal with it, the planning board didn't want to do it, so we set up another body and we meet kind of in an ad hoc basis.
Okay.
But we, haven't.
So if we get back to CEE, we'll have to figure out.
Yeah, who does that,
Yeah.
And then the last one is a very general question, but how do any of these zoning bylaw revisions, how do we encourage affordability? How do you do that?
Well, that's kind of a tall order. I remember how we used to do it in Hawaii. I was a planner in Hawaii for a while.
Nice work.
On Kauai. And It was easy out there, 10%, baby. Show us your affordable housing. We
Yeah.
had very strong affordable housing laws out there. We had very strong open space and park laws out there. So every subdivision had about 10% affordable housing, mostly for locals, and parks and playgrounds all over the place. And then you come back here and try to do it in Massachusetts, and it's like, there's no aloha left. You're out of.
How did it work in Hawaii?
It worked great.
Yeah.
Great. And one of my colleagues administered all the affordable housing stuff. So he was there for every residential project that we did, making the affordable housing arrangements.
Were the units sort of integrated or were they, how was that?
They were dispersed throughout the subdivision, but sometimes they were dispersed in like small groups here and there. So we didn't try to stick like two McMansions and then a tiny little affordable house. We put a few of the affordable houses together, so that they a little strength in numbers and so. But one thing that let's see, two of my other towns right now are working on is this idea of being able to divide the units up by bedrooms as an option. And with the idea that, so say you had 10 units and each one of them counts as 4 bedrooms. That's the average house. Maybe in Stockbridge it's more, but I think it's still a 4-bedroom house is the coin of the realm now. So that gives you 40 bedrooms. Normally it'd be 10 houses, 10 big 4-bedroom houses. But with an option to divide them up by bedrooms, you'd get some houses that were 2 bedrooms, maybe 3. Still some that were 4, maybe a few that were 5. Would all total out to 40 bedrooms, probably total out to more houses too, not just 10, but maybe 15 or more, or if you wanted to cap it. I know one of my other towns is going to cap it at 1.5, the total number of units. But that way developer gets to sell more houses, more different houses. And the idea would be that maybe he or she could sell 2-bedroom homes, nice homes, for more than sell 1 4-bedroom home.
We also discussed, like apartments or condos or something, a smaller bunch of units for people that want to downsize or that. Does that work into that kind of scheme, the bedroom scheme, rather than 4-bedroom houses? If we wanted to do some condo unit, 2-family houses, more affordable.
It does say in here somewhere that all housing types otherwise allowed can be built there. So if you're already.
Well, otherwise allowed is just, we only have 1- and 2-family houses. We don't have a provision in our subdivision bylaw for apartments or condominiums or, anything.
Okay,
that would
so you may want to
be
think
smaller
about.
units.
Right, you may want to think about not only number of bedrooms, but how those bedrooms would go in attached townhouse type.
Yeah, I think there are people in town that are interested in that kind of housing, downsizing a place, a condo type of government for in some parts of it, and not just all single-family houses.
Newlyweds.
Yeah, young people starting out, sure.
Didn't we also talk about density bonuses and granting a density bonus for a developer making a contribution to or agreeing to build affordable housing? And we took that out
That came out.
as a measure to streamline the bylaw, I think.
Right.
But at one of our meetings, there was commentary from a number of people in the public who thought, asking the same question you did, Carl, which is, what about affordable housing? And we're all scratching our heads trying to figure out how to do it. There is a new trust being established, Patrick, right? With that exact plan is to create affordable housing, separate and distinct from anything we do in the planning board, at least initially. But I think we did talk about giving developers more density in return for either building affordable units in the development or elsewhere, or paying for it. The 10% rule, I guess.
Yeah.
In simple terms.
Yeah. I mean, that's called inclusionary housing, zoning bylaws. Many towns have those, not particularly out here, but as you go east.
Yeah.
So there's lots of models for
I
that.
thought the town already had to maintain a certain stock of, what is described as.
There's a state mandate,
Right.
which is 10%. Many towns don't make it. The state doesn't enforce it, but Stockbridge and Williamstown and North Adams are the only towns in Berkshire County that,
And we're
Yeah.
pretty close, right?
we're at
Right at,
We're right there, but
Right above
we're still in compliance.
yeah,
Oh, well, you've gotten it to a pretty good place then.
yep.
It's taken many years of people
Well, no,
working very,
and Pine Woods.
yeah, well, I mean, those things didn't just happen.
Well, no, Tom worked on Pine Woods.
Yeah,
And Heaton Court has
Lot of
been
work.
for a while.
a lot of work.
The enforcement mechanism is somebody coming in with a comprehensive permit, running it all through your ZBA and kind of blowing all your zoning up along the way. If you don't have 10%.
I mean, can you do that and still have density negative? Be density negative?
Yep.
Okay.
Because if we're not talking about affordable housing, density is market rate. So you could have density negative and then you could do something. Then you could let them earn some of it back by doing the affordable housing. That's another reason that we originally put density bonuses in. We put it in for public access, for preserving more open space than the minimum required, for affordable housing. And it's a way for them to get some of their density back if they do things that the town really thinks are important. And you have to set those things up so they're worthwhile, because building affordable housing, if it's really affordable to those earning, what is it, 80% of area median income? Or 80 or 50, those aren't really profitable to build. So you've got to add some market units back in. It's not like the density bonus is allowing them to build more units, which are all affordable, because that's going to be a loser. So.
Right.
Jeff, you mentioned looking at our cluster of housing. Now, I understand cluster housing is no longer part of Mass General law. The word cluster housing is not part of that anymore. Is that correct?
Oh,
I mean, they changed it to open space residential or something. Is that correct?
they might have.
Like the spring?
Yeah, if you want to look that up, it's chapter 48.
Yeah.
Section 9,
Right.
some of those-
Housing is
some
no
of those-
longer really part of,
some of those paragraphs. Yeah,
so our cluster housing isn't really effective because it's changed.
well, it doesn't say, see, Massachusetts is a home rule state. So all the power to zone and regulate resides right here in Stockbridge. And the purpose of the state statutes is to limit, guide, and take away those abilities of yours. That's really all it is. State doesn't give you anything, it just takes away. So if they changed it to OSRD and didn't specifically say, here's cluster, you can't do it, then you can do it under your home rule powers. So if you have something that says cluster, it has now become a home rule bylaw, which you can do unless it's contraindicated in the statute.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I think you're fine with it.
Do we have to change the wording in our bylaw?
Well, let's see what our bylaws are going to be.
Only maybe if you wanted to actually do an OSRD.
Oh, okay.
So they've said some things about OSRD. And if you wanted to follow that closely, and be limited by what it says, you'd probably want to call it OSRD.
Oh, okay.
Natural resource protection zoning is entirely a home rule creature. Comes from the cities and towns. It doesn't come down from the state.
Okay. I'm mindful of the time. We've done this for an hour. Jeff, thank you for your time.
Can I say two more things? I didn't realize we were going to escort him out.
I'm not escorting him out. I know we've got
I know.
public business to
Two
do.
quick things.
You've asked some really great questions tonight. Maybe I won't be able to answer them, but if I could cogitate on them and get back to you, I'd appreciate that.
You like that word. Two things. You commented on our subdivision has not been used, in the past 11 or 12 years. So it begs the question, why would we need to change something? And the other thing is that it seems that we have some sort of balance with what we have now. But when you say you've included waivers in this NHRPZ because you're so far to the extreme of preserving and conserving that you're afraid you're going to be sued, that brings me away from something that would be an overall balance in a way for the town. It seems like it's very extreme.
The waivers are a vestigial part of this original bylaw, which was developed from 2005 until 2008 for my town on my planning board. And at the time, we thought this was way out there, that no town in Massachusetts had gone this far at that time. Since then, this has become one of the state models in the Smart Growth Toolkit, this NRPZ business. There's also an OSRD one, but there's also an NRPZ one. So, and many towns have adopted it. So we're getting a lot more comfortable now and there's been no challenges. And there's been pretty good acceptance on the parts of both towns and the landowners. So we're not as worried anymore on that score, that we've gone too far.
So your concern is the more waivers we grant, the more liability we assume?
No, his comment was that I think Kate's question was about the waivers, and I know she worries about the open-endedness of those type of things, I believe, so that she wants more of a black and white. And with the waivers, it allows a little bit of flexibility. And Jeff's answer was because it's so close to preserving and getting to where a court might find fault with it, that gives you that flexibility to adjust a little
It's a
bit.
safety valve,
Okay.
which the variance is not in Massachusetts, because you can barely use it. I don't know how your zoning board is, but.
Thank you.
So if you have, I need to learn more about the waivers. If you have literature or recommended reading, I think you need to sort of read more. Understand that better.
Yeah, we've built them in to a number of our processes in Tewksbury and in some of the other towns that I've worked in. And part of it is because the variance is not usable in Massachusetts. You go to the zoning board and, well, if you grant them illegally, they're useful. But that could easily be challenged. I mean, somebody didn't like it, your neighbor doesn't like it, and you get an illegal variance, you're going to lose if the neighbor pursues it. So we wanted a way that was a little more applicable to more sets of circumstances than the zoning variance. You have to show hardship, you have extreme hardship based on shape, topography or soils for a variance. If your hardship is not coming from one of those things, you don't qualify for a variance. So out of the door you go. Town of Amherst in 17 years granted one legal variance. It wasn't even legal. It was de minimis. It was like the tiny little lack of frontage. It wasn't even legal, but it was so small they got away with it. But it's just so hard. So that's why we put waivers in some of these things. The solar bylaws I write now have a waiver provision in them. Because again, we've gone way out there on requirements for major solar facilities. And number one, we want an escape valve. And number two, there may be instances where we don't have to enforce every jot and tip on the thing, so.
Okay.
Are you taking comments from the public?
Well, I'm mindful it's 20 to 8. We've got a special permit to address. Are there comments from the public? We'll take one or two. Let's see. Raise your hand if you want to say something. I see he's already made a comment. Is there anybody else?
We didn't answer it though.
I know. I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance who wants to speak before we go back to somebody who's already spoken.
Who said that? And I have not spoken.
I didn't say that. Go ahead, John.
Glad you're not on the Concom. Anyway, we have a Scenic Mountain Act in Stockbridge. And I don't see any reason why we can't have a Scenic Vistas Act in Stockbridge. But that's only part of the thing here. I'm really convinced that if we were to adopt this thing that is on somebody's breezeway, sorry, Skip or Jeff or whatever your name is, that we're probably going to open up the door to the Tom Spencers of the world who are just going to say, Stockbridge is open for development. Let's go see what we can get away with. And you guys are going to have your hands fuller than you want. So I would suggest that this thing be tabled and put away for a while. That's my only comment, and I will mute myself out.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Jeff, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Appreciate your time. Thanks for coming.
Good to see you all in person.
Yes.
Yeah, finally.
Drive back safely.
At least there's still some light in the sky.
Yeah.
And the rain's over.
20 Mackinac Shores. Who wants to speak to that? Lori? And,
Oh, yeah, Wayne's got to read the notice.
sorry, hang on. Wayne's got to read the,
So the ZBA meeting was misposted. Can you just ask if anyone's here for ZBA, because that meeting is not tonight.
is anybody here for ZBA?
The Train Hill project, if anyone's here for that, that was misposted on the website.
Apparently not.
Okay, good, thank
We're
you.
all here for our business.
Are you ready to read this?
Yes, please.
Sorry. Notice is hereby given that the Stockbridge Planning Board, acting as a special permit granting authority, is scheduling a public hearing at Stockbridge Town Offices for 6:30 PM on Tuesday, July 6, 2021, to consider the application Emerald Lake Nominee Trust at 20 Mackinac Shores Road to construct a new single-family dwelling under Section 6.5 of the Stockbridge zoning bylaws. The complete application and plans are on file in the planning board office in the town offices.
Thank you.
For the record, my name is Lori Robbins, attorney representing the applicant. I'm also identified as the trustee of the trust that owns the real estate, Emerald Lake Nominee Trust. The beneficiary of that trust is Jeffrey Ray, and he's here with us tonight. For the benefit of the new members of the board, I'll give you a little background on why we're here and how we got here. He had proposed to demolish and reconstruct a house on a very tiny lot at Mackinac Shores. And because it exceeded the footprint of the existing non-conforming house, the abutters were most concerned about this expansion. And as a result, the applicant withdrew his application for that house. It was a house designed by Pam Sandler. It was beautiful, but in the abutters' concerns, it was too big for the lot. Subsequently, he came back with a smaller plan done by Pamela Sandler on the exact same footprint of the existing house. And that application was approved by the planning board here on June 19th. That grant was approved. I'm going to give you each a copy of the, and this is on both sides, the plan that was approved showing the Pam Sandler design. After the permit was approved, and this was the planning board approved it, the selectmen approved it, Conservation Commission approved it, and then the applicant hired one of the best builders in the state to build it. But during the collaboration with David Lanu, who's here to discuss any questions you may have, he decided to go with a slightly different design of this building. The footprint of it will be on the exact same footprint as the original existing, but actually a little bit smaller, ever so slightly smaller than what was permitted in June of 2022. Because it was so much, June of 2020. Because it was different, you'll see the window package is different, the roofing is a little bit different. They had attempted to come to the town hall and ask if they could just have a modification of the permit that was granted in June of 2020. Town council said, no, you have to come back with a whole new application. So they have come back with a new application. Steve Mack from Foresight Land Services is here to show you the plan, the site plan, and describe the minute differences between the design and the smaller version of the proposed house on this lot.
So can we, before you start, Steve, can we share this plan? And Steve, are you here from CTSB? Sorry?
It's zoomed in.
I know, but the screen sharing is not enabled. Steve, are you here? Oh, I'm on mute.
You got bored with us.
Steve, are you here? Oh, sorry.
Echo.
So you can put the share on?
Do we know how many people are zooming in?
Jennifer could also just zoom in on the,
Drawing.
physically with the camera. Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
That could be problematic. Is anybody zooming in?
Yeah, there are people zooming in.
How many? Do we know?
There's, see, 1, 2, 3,
Okay.
4, 5.
All right. Well, if we can screen share, we should. But
I'll chat 'em.
Screen share on your library.
You're enabled for screen share.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, again, my name is Steve Mack from Foresight and here for 20 Mackinac Shores Road. On this plan here, this is essentially the same site plan that was approved in 2020. Mackinac Shores Road is here. Stockbridge Bowl is right here. Obviously, the existing and proposed house footprint is located in this gray area. And really what we're here for is a slight, very minor revision to the house, the proposed house footprint and elevation views. So you have the previously approved elevation views that Lori handed out, and I can just show those to you here.
That are noted here as saying existing, because it's not existing yet.
These were the previously.
It's more prior rather than existing. Yeah, okay, all right.
This is the Pam Sandler design.
Yeah.
And what they're proposing here is the David New design.
Yeah.
So this is the elevation view from the street, which would be the east elevation on the sketches that you have. So as you can see, it's a very minor revision to the plans. It's an aesthetic revision. Previously, there was a dormer that was proposed off of the existing roofs, and that's been eliminated. And there was a porch on the front of the building, which has been eliminated, which brings the front setback more in compliance than what was there previously. And then this area is generally similar, just with some architectural revisions, the same setback. We're actually slightly further away from the southerly boundary by about 0.4 feet, so a few inches further away. This is the lakefront elevation, which again is very similar to the previous elevation view without the dormers that were proposed.
Nothing's changing in the pictures being shown on the computer is for some reason. Is it?
We're not seeing the right
like projected?
elevation.
We haven't
or-
seen the elevations yet. for
Okay,
people.
hold on 1 second. Okay, which,
So that's the one that's on there now is the elevation that I just spoke about previously. That's the elevation view from the street, where I said that we removed a proposed porch on the front, so it's improving the existing nonconformity to the street line.
but there was no porch on the front.
There was like a sort of stoop area on the front previously.
There's a very, when you say the front, that was on the south side.
It's here. You can see in the existing condition.
Like a patio.
There was like a covered roof area with a pad porch walkway, which was part of the structure. So the next elevation, I don't think I got the south yet.
This is the south elevation?
Yeah, the one you're showing is south. and
Okay.
That's about 0.4 feet.
Is that where you're at, or?
I wasn't, but I can go there. It's okay.
No, just tell me which one you want me to pull up.
So this is the proposed south elevation, which again is functionally and fundamentally the same as what was previously approved, slightly further from the property line. The proposed area that's located right here is essentially the same. We are proposing a door on the south, which we didn't propose before, which is a minor revision to the previous plan.
The dormer is gone.
Exactly, yeah, that's right. The dormer before went across here.
Are the heights any different?
The heights will be the same, existing and proposed. The floor elevations are the same, basement floor elevation is the same, and the maximum height's the same.
What's the height?
It's 34.5 feet.
Okay, because I don't see that shown anywhere on these plans.
Yeah, it's in that narrative.
It's over here on the left.
That was the previous.
But in the current one, I don't see it anywhere.
Oh,
It's in the narrative as less than 35 feet.
I think it should be shown on the plans.
not much less.
Yeah, well, that's what was approved before, and
Yeah.
that's the maximum height from the tallest part of the building to the tallest part of the peak. So
So how are you measuring that height from where to, from what part?
peak of the building to the grade outside the building right here is the maximum height.
So that's the west.
Yes.
Okay, hold on, let me get there so people can see that.
Oops, other way.
Sorry,
That's good.
there.
Right there, yeah.
Okay.
That's the maximum elevation.
Steve, if you can just tell me where you want me to go. As we
Sure, yeah.
forward through this.
So like I said, the front yard setback will be increased by approximately a foot. The north property line setback will remain the same. The south setback will be increased or more conforming by 5 inches or so. And the west lake setback is approximately the same. The building height is the same as what was proposed before. The footprint, as Lori said, is slightly smaller in the proposed condition. It's the previous house and approved footprint was 1,142 square feet, and the proposed house is 1,131 square feet, plus or minus. There's some tenths in there.
So how are you arriving at that smaller footprint?
Yeah, so it's slightly,
You know, because Steve, when I look at page 2 of this request, I see you've got existing coverage, which was the previous says 1,142 square feet, but then you've got the mass is 2,130 square feet. And I'm sort of having trouble understanding that because the 2018 and 2020 requests show the mass as being 1,428 square feet.
yeah, the mass is calculated differently than the coverage. The coverage.
No, I know that, but the mass in the 2018 and 2020 requests for the existing was shown as 1,428. So I'm just wondering how it's jumped to 2,130.
I think there was an error in the previous one. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's something that needs to be fixed. There are a bunch
It
of,
has been fixed in this one here.
in the narrative that you have there?
Correct.
Okay, because the version, what I'm looking at here is dated June 2021.
I'm doing June 2021, the mass is 2,130,
Yeah, that for the existing or for the proposed?
both.
Yeah, that's my question is, I don't see how you could have a mass of 2,130. Plans for 2018 and 2020 showed a mass of 1,428.
Right, we left out the part of the finished basement in the previous version.
But the existing is for the previous cottage,
Correct.
so,
I'm confused by the question.
well, the previous cottage was quite a bit smaller.
The previous cottage had,
It was incorrect math on the previous
Yeah.
cottage. The mass is 2,130.
footprint change, the 10 square feet is taken up by the reduction in setback here, the reduction in this area here that we had proposed for, and then the slight reduction here.
And you're talking about the 1940 house that we approved demolishing
Correct, yes,
back in 2017.
correct, yeah,
Okay.
which we have pictures of.
Yeah.
But so that pre-existing, that porch that we don't know what the status of that was, you're basically cantilevering that out so that it's increasing the footprint in a sense from the visual impact to the south as it builds out.
Which is allowed under the zoning bylaw.
Yeah, but this is a special permit, so.
Right, so we are proposing to use the pre-existing deck and have that area, that deck covered over, which is again allowed by the zoning bylaw.
Right, and how far, and I'm not talking at the bottom part of the foundation, I'm talking about the upper level. How far is that from the lot line?
That is 4.48 feet, which is what's shown right here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the deck was 4.08 feet. So we're a little bit further away.
Right, but the deck did not go up it was on the ground floor and it didn't go up for.
Yeah, it was on piers and it had lattice work all around it and whatnot, but yes. So I know there's been a lot, I'll just tackle it right now. There's been a lot of discussion about the area between the house and the shoreline. That area has been constructed, under construction, being generally constructed, and it is in compliance with the previously approved plans, in compliance with the Conservation Commission plans. We've met with the Conservation Commission several times. Last time we met with them in the field, they concurred that it was in agreement with what was approved. DEP has been contacted. We've talked to DEP, Mark Stinson, who's the circuit rider for the Wetlands Protection Act, and he reviewed the plans and he reviewed the work, not on site, but photos and whatnot. and also agrees that what was approved on the plans is what is being built. So that is just to cover that section there. Nothing else on the plan has really changed other than proposing a door on the south side, which changes some of the grading, but not much right through here. We always had a proposed walkway through here. We're still keeping the proposed parking, which will be pervious parking, as well as a patio in front of the proposed house. So it's a pretty.
Are you planning on, I mean, the boulders at the shoreline?
The boulders have been removed from the fall and they've been redone with plants that are consistent with the plans that are in front of you.
So, wait a minute, so when I was on the site visit last week, I'm trying to understand what you just said. You said the boulders have been removed?
Correct.
What I
There
saw
was huge boulders there last spring that were put there to stabilize the site.
And
Those
the
have all been removed. And now there's, in our previous plans, we were proposing to remove the garbage. I have photos I can pass around too if anybody's interested in it. And this was the detail that was approved. Oops, I got a little wet in our site visit, I apologize. You know that. But this was the detail that was approved, and we had proposed on the plan view to remove all the debris and cement and concrete and steel. This is the water line right here, and we were proposing to rebuild the shoreline with sort of these planted pockets of rocks and whatnot.
Okay, so what I saw on the site visit last week was that there were boulders in the water. So I'm having trouble reconciling that with what you're showing here on the plan. And I'll scroll down. These boulders here. Oh, I'm sorry, hold on. Are shown not in the water.
There you go.
But the boulders that I saw
Yeah, so
are very much in the
there
water.
was debris and garbage and concrete all through here. That was also removed. The shoreline previously, as staked in the field, is, and you guys saw the stakes that we staked in the field, is right here. So the work and the proposed stabilization of the shoreline is inland of the water line historically. So if you can picture removing sort of concrete cinder blocks and whatnot right here, the water is not going to touch.
And when were those removed?
Last fall.
So did you or did you not see rocks in the water?
I saw rocks in the water. I mean,
What's going on?
It's funny, I've explained this so many times, I'm trying to figure out a way to explain it.
I might even have a picture of it if I can,
So the water line previously was right here, right? There was all sorts of debris and garbage everywhere. We removed that debris and garbage and built the rocks right here. So the water just goes to where that area of new stabilization is. It touches the rocks now because we've removed the garbage that was in front of it, but we're still on the upland side of the bank of Stockbridge Bowl.
And that was confirmed by a survey.
Yep, we've surveyed it. We've, again, reviewed it with DEP because there was a lot of back and forth of
Official finding.
You saw something different?
I saw boulders in the water and, look, I think that, from the information from the DEP, Steve is correct that the DEP has said, look, the Conservation Commission needed to address this in their, help me with the terminology, Patrick, notice of intent, was that it?
Order of conditions.
Order of conditions, but who could possibly anticipate this whole situation with the boulders on this site? Nobody. You know, I mean, how could the Conservation Commission possibly anticipate that these boulders were going to be? I can actually have some other pictures from.
Yeah, I'll just pass around while you're doing that. I'll just pass around this page here. I've got a few copies, but this is the northerly portion of the site right here. In this location, and it continues all the way through, but this is just a good indication. So this was the water line. It comes down and around like this. You can see it on the previous page. here. I'll walk everybody through this. Oops. You can see this was the old shoreline, and then it jutted in here on the north, right? This area here is this. So all this was removed and rocks were put back in. You can just leave it bare. So that's what it was before. So the water is in this.
Are these for distribution?
Yeah, yeah, I apologize. Some of them are black and white, but here's some more versions of the photos.
I mean, I also have, I'm going to show you guys another photograph, just so you can get a sense of, so here's a photograph from,
I mean, the stuff within the.
yeah. So there's a photograph that you can sort of see, if you look carefully,
Very finished product.
if you look carefully, you're going to see on the left side of this photograph, there's sort of a spindly little tree in there. Okay, this is before, this, I don't know, this might have been before tear down. You can see there's some grass here, some branches. And if you look at that spindly little tree here, just hold that in your memory for a minute. And then come over here. And again, you see that spindly tree? And look at those boulders.
Those boulders are.
They're in front of it. Those are gone?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Merely.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Placeholders, you know, at the time to protect the shoreline from erosion.
Okay, all right. I guess my question then is if they're gone, then why didn't they just get removed altogether from the shoreline?
You have to hold back the bank at the same grade.
Oh, so you're planning on removing them still?
Those boulders are no longer there. They're gone.
Okay, but the ones that are in the water now, are you
Those
planning?
are the restoration of the shoreline that replaced all the cinder blocks and junk. That's this plan right here.
Okay, I thought they were pretty huge and I thought they were the same boulders. Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm just, look, I thought these were the same boulders that were there now because the boulders that are there now are so large. But, I'm glad they were removed. I just wish the other ones hadn't been put in.
Well, don't forget, that was all full of big chunks of concrete and pipe and debris. And you show the other pictures?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and
Definitely.
so when all that was cleaned up and the bigger stones were put in along there as placeholders late in the year, the water came back in around that area and it looked as if we were infringing on the shoreline. But actually, confirmed by survey, the shoreline is out another 5 or 6 feet.
That's just simply not true.
Actually, the shoreline is at the stakes.
This is a scientific.
The shoreline is at the.
Let Steve finish his presentation. We'll take comments from the audience later.
So if everybody saw this photo, this is essentially the junk that was removed and it got put back in a nice way. It's stable, it's undulating, there's plantings all throughout. This whole area will be planted when we're done. And I've said this a lot of times to the Conservation Commission, I guess, but if we were to be asked to restore a shorefront, like in an ecologically friendly way, this is what we would be doing. Like we took out all the invasives, all the junk, all the garbage, and we're gonna revegetate the whole thing with native plants and vegetation.
I mean, can you vegetate that area where
Need to mute your.
oh, yeah. Can you revegetate that whole area where the boulders, I mean, that's from the conservation standpoint, the riparian zone is an important area. So when I looked at those boulders, correct me if I'm wrong, I see an area that cannot be revegetated. And I'm going to show you.
And now the whole area here, there's plant pockets throughout. There's been 4 substantial trees planted, and then all of this lower ground cover is going to be now interspersed over the next year.
Right, I mean,
all rocks.
if you look at the screen that I've just shared, This is from Berkshire Regional Planning, by the way. And here you just sort of get a sense of what, from a conservation standpoint, what works, because you've got, people can access their docks, you know, they've got the stairways going down, but then you've got, on the sides of those, you've got these vegetated areas. So when I look at those, you know, and Jeff Ray's here, and I want you to have a nice property. I want this to be, you know, a beautiful home for you. But I'm also concerned about conservation, you know, the lake is a public good, and then we have abutters. So, you know, there are various different interests here. I do want things to be nice for you. Please don't take this the wrong way.
So just to talk to that photo, we have shrubs and bushes and trees and ground cover that is designed to fill in that space that we're working in. That's like what we're doing.
But do you see how these, you know, these bushes hang down over the lake? Is that going to be possible?
We put in the big trees as you saw.
Yep.
Those are native paper birches.
Yep.
And so they'll hide that house, you know, as they grow. There's a red oak in there.
But do you know what I'm talking about when I talk about that buffer area right at the lake shore?
And we're looking at other native plants. For the plan, we said we were going to vegetate that with low bush blueberries and different native plants. And that's still the plan. We just need to do that in the fall, so if winter's over appropriately, we needed to get the big trees in now because we put those in with machines. Those have huge root balls, and they're good sized trees now, and they'll grow and hide the building that it's going to be behind. The goal is to have that site look like it's been there for a couple hundred years with the restored timber frame type building that Dave has designed, and that's really the only modification. The site plan stayed exactly the same from what was approved previously by this board and the Conservation Commission, what we built. And we didn't change the site.
I mean, I think if you can do plantings, you know, as shown that, as I know you want to have a dock.
We won't have any grass. I don't want grass because I don't want fertilizers in there. You know, everything has been about taking care of that lake. We put in extensive drainage so it doesn't go over the surface, and warm water with fertilizer and all the junk that comes off of that steep hill that goes down there. It's going to be captured and go underground and then filtered into the lake.
I mean, I didn't see any.
Already all in.
Right, I did.
The foundation obviously isn't in, so there's going to be more drainage above the foundation, the parking lot and everything else. So everything on that site plan that was approved is what we're executing to.
Right, I guess I just didn't, you know, the drainage, stormwater runoff is another thing I wonder about. I don't see any rain gardens or anything that will actually address stormwater runoff. And, you know, between the foundation and those boulders, you're definitely increasing impervious surface.
There's 3 or 4 different levels of drainage. One is the parking of the street. That's not in yet because we haven't got foundation in. There's going to be 2 around the foundation for gutters and for
okay, but is that just directing the stormwater runoff down to the lake?
So this whole area right here
Yeah.
is 8 inches of pervious material, so crushed stone and sand.
Okay,
So the water's gonna come here, it's gonna filter down into that. This patio is dry laid with a gravel base below it, which will absorb water. This entire area here is also the same 8 inches of crushed stone and sand filled. So everything that comes here is gonna, it's essentially acting like a big sponge, all these areas, which are not there before. Like if you look at the pictures before, this was just a mess of lawn and invasives, and it certainly wasn't that before. You know, we're trying to get to that.
You can't see the amount of perforated pipe and crushed stone that's below grade. See, because that all happens underneath. All you can see are their planting pockets and trees.
right. I mean, I think that, you know, pipe is, pipes are usually moving water from one place to another, and I'm more interested in something like a rain garden or bioswale or something to filter the stormwater runoff.
Well, that's essentially what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, we've got these areas that are taking the water in. It's significantly more pervious than it was prior to construction.
All right, well, what I would, recommend, since there's a lot going on here, and this is certainly not my area of expertise, but it is the Concom's area of expertise, is that you make sure that that's in, if the board decides to approve this tonight, that there be a condition by which the Concom will review the drainage.
We already have approval from the Concom. We're operating under a current permit.
Well, you may have approval, but I'd recommend that, they review the
They do
plans.
review it
and
every
review-
3 years.
I'm sorry?
They do review it up to 3 years.
Patrick, what's the mechanism for review, do you know?
So I think it's in your conditions.
That's their problem.
Okay.
That's their
It's not
problem.
our
Okay.
If it's been approved by the Concom, we're done with it.
Well, they approved it, but they didn't, approve it based on,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Approve these plans other
This is
than
what's
the
been approved.
elevation.
Let's move
and
on.
Footprint.
Okay.
Which doesn't affect the wetlands.
Yeah, let's move on.
So I think I'm done unless there's questions.
Okay. Any questions from members of the planning board?
You said you had photos of the house that was demolished. I was looking for those, but I couldn't,
We're in the.
Here?
In the book that was sent out.
That one right here.
yeah, that place.
There's two, one from the front and
Right,
that's from the
right.
back.
Okay, no, yeah, we dealt with that,
Yeah.
So, and is that,
No,
this is Pam's
this was an intermediate
proposed
plan.
plan,
No,
exactly.
that's the original. That is what was demolished.
Okay, yeah,
That is the demolished.
Right, you're right.
That's
The
the
upper one is
demolished one.
existing, the lower was
Right, yeah.
proposed.
Well, so it's, I mean, it did grow 10 feet higher than the old house,
But it's
you know,
still within the 35.
yeah. Okay,
Any other
Thank you.
questions from the planning board?
yeah, I think it's, given the history of this project and the many iterations of it, it would be really important from the standpoint of a butter's sense of security here, that the footprint be staked clearly and so that, everybody can see what is going to happen here in terms of the footprint. When I was on the site last week, it was not staked clearly. It was sort of very difficult to see the footprint. And I would recommend that, Jeff, I know you were on site and you staked it, but I think it should be done by the engineering firm. And, I think it's important that abutters have a chance to actually.
Yeah, we just need to have that done by a machine to get that ready to stake, because there's piles of material there, it's in the middle of construction. And so we'll stake it definitely before we pour the foundation, because that's how we'll dig the foundation. So we'll make sure it's exactly what is on the plans that were approved or will be approved.
Well, I guess I would recommend staking it before this board moves ahead with this.
I would disagree.
No.
We have a
No way.
plan here that spells it out in great
No way.
detail. It's been
Yeah.
explained in great detail.
We
Yeah.
had a site visit.
I mean, we had a site visit.
I'd like
I don't
to
know what
ask,
more we-
I'd like
what
to
we-
ask if there are abutters comments. Please.
My name is Tom Fine, and I'm the abutter to the north. We actually supported this project back in June of 2020 when it got approved. My concern is not about the structure or the house or the plant. My concern is what we've all been talking about here, is that things that are happening on the ground are kind of like what the plans are, but I think there's no one there, and if you can ask the Conservation Commission, I don't think any of them thought they were approving what exists on the land now. And my concern is that what will be built is not what's going to be approved now. That it's going to be a little bit bigger, it's going to be a little bit taller, the foundation is going to be a little bit this way.
Well, that can be much more clearly stated than landscaping.
But that's just what I said, the whole plan for the lakefront, it does not look anything like what anyone thought it was going to. There were holes in the wall.
Yeah.
But there aren't anymore.
That's the correct tense.
Yeah.
And there is certainly well, there's some, there were before too.
Not like that. Yeah, not like that.
I've lived there for 13 years.
Yeah, I mean.
Well, put it this way, I think that a lot of the concrete was replaced by stone. Big chunks and piers of concrete. Quite a pile of it. Oh, yeah.
I grew up
I'm not here to
nearby.
argue about the
Yeah.
site plan, but I'm concerned that what you all approve will not be done based on the past history of the project.
In response to that, when was the last time conservation was there?
Maybe a month ago.
So they saw the current condition.
Yeah, we've walked it with.
I mean, if they've looked at current conditions, then I don't think that based on your statement there that it's past tense, it's
So I
so.
think it's a bad tax, nothing can be done about that. I think the issue is that what exists does not look like people thought it would look from those plans. And I'm concerned about the house the same way.
And you don't think that plan for plantings and growth will eventually blossom
There's a
into?
lot of stone, there's a lot of mulch.
Did you do a site visit, Wayne?
Can I just address just one point? The mulch is gonna go away.
Well, it's going away already, because all over my dock.
But part of the Concom's discussion was this all needs to be planted.
So who here did a site
I'm
visit?
looking at what the proposal says. And based on what's gonna be on that shoreline, I think you get,
Did you do a site visit, Wayne?
I've been by the house previous,
But have you been on site? Did you see
not
the,
with anybody.
did you
I've
see?
been
the-
on a site visit every other day, and I'm on the Concom, and we have a little peninsula that was created out there, which do with it as you want. I mean, DEP approved it. We have our hands tied. It is not what we'd like to see happening around the lake.
But you approved it.
I did not involve myself in any approval of this, and it has not come in any way before our board. It may be in a paper form that we haven't had put before us.
No, wait a minute. Has the Concom approved this or not?
They have, we have an order.
So what are you talking about?
These plans.
The Concom did not anticipate what happened there. And because they did not, because they didn't anticipate it, the DEP did not support their request for support on dealing with the shoreline.
The Concom was there a month ago.
They were, and this is the plan that was in front of them, other than this plan has slightly more.
And they didn't anticipate it, Steve, that's my
But
point.
this is the plan that lays it out, like if you were to overlay this on a site, this is what's on site.
This was not the plan that was put before the Concom at the beginning of this whole project. That's why the boulders got stopped.
In May of 2020, this is the plan that was approved by the Conservation Commission.
So what would the lake look like if every single property around the lake puts boulders at the shoreline in the same way?
And did what you've done. Little peninsulas.
Peninsula is the wrong word.
If we had that line delineated, it prior to
Also,
Jeffrey's
there's conjecture.
we did a survey.
But you didn't mark it, so we didn't see
It
it.
is marked right now.
Was it marked on the site visit?
It was marked on the site visit when we were there.
It was not marked there a year ago when they put the boulders in.
So this survey was
I have
done.
the pictures.
The boulders are gone.
No, they're not. Smaller boulders are there now.
The boulders in the water are gone.
Further into the lake.
So in 2017, we did a survey that was signed and recorded in the Registry of Deeds, which lays out the top of bank right here, follows the existing deed, and it follows our wetlands person's delineation of the bank. This line is what is staked out in the field with the orange ribbon on it, and this is what was approved and used for design. I don't know what more I can say.
I guess going forward, and I asked you for the site visit last week, I asked you to stake the footprint of the house. You had not done it. Going forward, I want to see the lot line staked and I want to see the footprint staked. And if it's on the lake, which most of our requests are, I want to see the shoreline
The
staked.
shoreline is staked.
We've had too many of these requests blow up on us.
Were you
I
there
would
when he
also
was
like,
there?
I would also like to see photographs taken by Tom and Bill next door of what was there before, all the way down the shoreline to the south end of the lake, if that is at all possible.
Let's see what I have. But I don't want to, what happened, the site visit, from my perspective, I said, I support I support this house, I support this plan. The shoreline it's done. It was wrong. I think it looks terrible. I think if the rest of the lake looked like that, it would be an embarrassment to the town of Stockbridge, but that's my taste, right? And
Do you have comments? Are you another abutter?
I'm his husband, and
Okay, sorry.
and I agree with everything he's saying. The other concern I would raise is an immediate one, which is in the rain the last couple of days. There's a huge amount of erosion from the new parking area that got created with not the dirt that was dug out of the foundation, but with dirt that was trucked in. And it's all washing down into the lake. We watched this brown plume in front of Jeff's property during the rainstorms last week. And it's just, it needs to be better.
Yeah, that'll be done. The excavation contractor will take care of that. We had a tremendous amount of rain, don't forget.
Well, I absolutely understand that.
Everybody's really mindful of doing this in proper manner. There's just no question about that.
So what,
Yes, sorry,
okay, yeah.
I'm Judy Newman, I'm the abutter on the south side. And I'm not gonna talk about the shoreline because it's done. And there's not much we can do about it, but I would like to move forward to ask to see if the outhouse can be moved. Does that have to stay there as an eyesore, a smelly eyesore for the whole rest of the summer? And then there's the excavation.
you mean a porta potty?
It's been there for almost a year.
Been construction.
We would have been happy to take that out of there if we could continue working last fall as planned.
Well, that wasn't, we have little kids coming and it is an attractive nuisance and.
That'll all be taken care of. Somebody will be down there tomorrow, you can bet on that.
The porta potty has been used by many workmen in the area. They did come and clean it a few days.
Well, we gotta send some people bills then.
Or whatever.
Well, we thought it was best to have restroom facilities for the people working in the area. And yes, there's been a contractor at a few houses down and they've been using it, which is
Right,
fine.
not your people, there was nobody, and a friend, I think, of yours was there, that's fine, I mean, it's there. But we have to look at that the whole summer with no work being done.
You should have gone way past the out stage by now, that's the problem.
Are there any,
We have nothing to do with that.
it wasn't our fault that he changed his plan.
are there any other comments from abutters?
Yes. Legal to have the equipment and the porta potty there for the summer.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Open, children can go into it, children can go onto the machine, onto the tractor, excavator. It's right in front of my door.
Be trespassing if they did.
Yeah.
It's not legal. Our bylaw actually prohibits having equipment, construction equipment that's on site when there is no actual construction happening. And I don't know what your timeline, you said
We're
that.
doing site construction and, if we get this, Dave's already started a lot of construction in his shop and we want to get this up as soon as possible. The plan was to have it up last fall, but we ran into a stop work order and
Well,
we honored that.
I thought someone said the association had some rules about when construction can happen.
July 1st and Labor Day.
I'm sorry?
There can be no work between the
Now,
4th
is
and
that a
July.
courtesy, where does that appear?
It's in the association bylaws.
So then
The
equipment,
deed, is that?
And it pertains to all of us.
It ain't all of us.
It's being a good neighbor.
And it's called being a good neighbor.
Okay, hello. Yes, I've been trying to speak. I'm number 24 Mackinac Shores Road. And we are not direct abutters. We are right behind the abutters, right behind Dorothy Kahn. We are the last full construction to have happened in Mackinac Shores. We had some hesitation from our neighbors about the height of our house. So we had to physically show how high our house was going to be. I mean, it was first done with balloons from the current structure, but their current structure is gone, so that can't happen. But I at least request that no permission is granted to go forward until they put the actual height of the structure on all 4 elevations. And if there's a suggestion as to how to show the neighbors physically, I know you can stake the footprint, you can't stake the height, but there must be maybe some way that you know of to physically show the abutters what the height will be.
Other than on the plan?
You know, actually can't happen.
The height is not written on the plan, but it should be. And I'll just read you the section
Can I
under.
ask one question about the elevation?
Sure.
Is the new elevation based, is that measured from the elevation of the old structure, from the grade of the old structure? Or is it measured from whatever height it is?
Patrick, do you
It seems like the old structure, the old grade is no longer there.
Yeah, the floor elevation of the building that's in front of the board is the same floor elevations as those that were discussed at length last summer, last summer, and approved last summer.
I'm not seeing what you're showing, but I know that we were required to show elevations of the existing structure, or the pre-existing structure, and the structure. Is that what you're showing?
So I know you can't see these plans, but we have on
I'll pull it up.
the elevation views, we have the existing grade and proposed grades shown.
The existing grade is no longer there. That's the trouble.
It's the pre-existing grade.
I mean, the pre-existing grade is no longer there. It's been completely changed.
Right, but we have a survey, so we have a record of it.
Like your survey said the lake was 3 inches shorter than it really is.
So did Sally Level speak yet?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I guess, I would, there's also the question of the timeline. I mean, there's just, in this request application, there's a lot of numbers that don't jive. And, but I guess.
Like what?
Well, on page 2, I still don't feel like the existing and proposed table is accurate. And then,
What's inaccurate?
it doesn't make sense.
How?
The existing mass is shown as, from the original building, is shown as 2130.
We just heard about that. We've dealt with that. What else?
Let's move forward then. We're not communicating, we're not understanding well. Vegetation within the LPOD, existing 75%, proposed 75%. That doesn't make sense. In terms of soil
Why doesn't it make
excavated.
sense?
If you look at the plan, I mean, how can, with all those boulders and a basement, you can't possibly be at 75%.
Just to answer your question, the pre-existing site had stone patio here, stone patio here, stone patio out here. We correlated the pre-existing conditions.
So, hold on a second. The wording is natural vegetation shall be maintained on at least 75% of the total lot area within the LPOD. Obviously, that's not happening here. And then I guess the timeline on page, you've got 67 weeks. That seems like an awfully long build period.
I'll be honest with you.
I mean, 32 weeks of that have already been done. You've got mobilization, tree protection, fencing, and erosion control, clearing and grubbing, demolition of existing structure. I don't understand your timeline.
I think it's a fair question, right? We have been back and forth to numerous meetings. Putting the schedule together is not an easy task because we're not sure what's going to happen tonight with this board. If we're going to then, I'm not sure if Jeff or Lori can speak to waiting till Labor Day, I don't know. So I'm happy to talk about the schedule, but we have to put something in for the regulations and that's our best guess.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so, I mean, I think that it's important to have a plan that shows the height. I'm concerned about the grade, but I can see the board doesn't have the appetite for that discussion. Just a minor thing on your plan, you've got last year's date, May 5th, 2020, update that. And, let's see. And I think there needs to be some mechanism to secure that, make sure that footprint is what actually gets built. And I would recommend that we involve the building inspector in checking to make sure that the foundation is poured in accordance with the plan presented here.
That's part of his
That's
natural
his job.
course of duties.
Will he do that as part of, okay,
It's his job.
all right, okay, good. So he goes on site and he makes sure that those setbacks are in place and they're according to plan? Okay, okay, good.
He has to see it.
You know what, he's never come here before the board and said exactly what a special permit process from his standpoint looks like, and I think it would be great if he did so. You guys seem to know him better than I do, so.
Well,
We had him doing that in our house when we had
I
construction.
haven't had him at my house, so I wouldn't know.
So he does.
always comes around.
He's never been to my house, so I wouldn't know.
He caused the foundation of our garage to be torn up because it was improperly laid. He knows his stuff,
Yeah.
and he enforces the drawings. Is there any other discussion? Sorry.
Can I ask one more question? Looking at the drawing of the south elevation of the new proposed house, I'm struck by the proposed grade from essentially the level of the first main floor of the house, the middle level of the house, down to the basement level. That looks like a very steep grade on an already, far steeper than the existing grade that showed on the plan.
Yeah.
Just, that concerns me, just in terms of water runoff and, I don't know what the path from the parking area to the front of the house, to the waterfront is gonna be. Is it which side of the house it's on, or is it on both sides? And I just, that looks like it would need stairs if it's gonna be the,
We do show in the site plan some steps along the south border. So we have that all graded with contours on here. And then we do show just sort of like field stone steps that would step down.
Steve, question for you. On calculations of water infiltration, what do you base your worst case scenario on? Is it 50-year storm?
Yeah, well, we try to make sure it's stable in a 100-year storm, but
100
it's certainly not going to absorb a 100-year storm. But we have the stone steps, and it's gonna sort of follow those. We have a lot of drainage and under drainage that'll help, so trying to make sure it doesn't erode in a 100-year storm.
What's the surface of the parking area?
This is, again, it's gonna be a planted gravel, crushed stone, so it'll be like a thyme mixture that'll absorb water.
Because whatever was there when I went on the site visit got all over my kitchen floor and I had to.
I don't think that'd be what's permanent. I still have some of that.
All right. Yeah. It doesn't go away easily.
Welcome to the planning board.
Yes.
In your rain gardens and things for that?
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Yes, I didn't know if you had finally just addressed or decided how that you will physically show the height of the house from the grade, which seems to be always in question, to the top.
I mean, we know that the height is 34 and a half feet.
Correct.
I don't think we have the ability or the power to impose a balloon test to show what 34 and a half feet looks like.
We certainly have, it is certainly within our discretion to request that the height be shown on a plan.
Well, it's shown on the plan. It's, I mean, you can't show the third dimension.
My plan shows
It's
it.
34.5 feet.
That's probably elevations.
That's the old plan. The new plan is drawn to scale. In the narrative, it does say less than 35 feet, but it is.
I would actually like to see it shown on the plan as, spot elevation showings. I mean, many of the requests we get do show that. Most
But
of
it
them, in
is,
fact.
but it is 34.5 feet. We do know that.
Kate, I hear what you're saying about the, this is Sally Lebwell again, about the height being shown on all 4 elevations. So there's no confusion about that. But also, we were required to do a height test with the helium balloon. And we didn't have the same grading, where grade was going to be the same issue about that. So I don't know why there can't be, a 35-foot stick put in the ground from grade up to where the top of the building is before the foundation is built.
Okay, I didn't know that.
5 feet, it doesn't matter where the balloon comes. If it's under, if it conforms to regulations, it doesn't matter where the
Special
balloon.
permit, the board can, there's a special permit, the board can ask for these things.
Yes, they
You may
can.
not want to, and that's fine, but the board can certainly ask. for these
If
things.
it's under 35 feet and it's to the regulations, even if a balloon is,
You can look in your minutes from however many years ago when this house at 24 Mackinac was constructed and see what mechanism was used to require the owners of this property to do the balloon test, and then use that same mechanism to require of the owner of 20 Mackinac.
And
I'm sure you have minutes somewhere.
and we also, it might have been on a site visit actually, that we were told that we needed to do that. But our house was only 29 feet. There wasn't as much grade to be dealt with as to where you're getting that 34.5 feet from.
that's what I was gonna say, even if you don't like it. If it's,
So I am asking if the planning board can possibly do something to show physically the height of the house.
And let's say, Sally, let's say we do that. We put a balloon up and it's 34.5 feet and you don't like it. Then what do? It's within regulation.
It's not a matter of liking it or not liking it. It's a matter of documenting it so that we can see what it will be.
However, that it was required last time, I don't think how it's any different in this situation.
That's part of what the building inspector is going to verify.
As a butter, I don't find that necessary.
yeah. That's just.
Okay, any other questions, comments from the public? I think we're ready to vote.
We need to close the meeting if we're going to.
That's right. I
So
guess.
as long as the discussion is over with.
Yeah, I think it's over. Can I have a motion to close the
I move
public
to
hearing?
close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
You don't have to say your name. Okay. The hearing's closed. I think we have to do the findings. Can we incorporate those by reference under 6.3.6? Is there an objection? Or do you want me to read them? Hearing none, we'll incorporate the findings under 6.3.6 in the minutes. Let's proceed to vote. All in favor?
We're gonna, you.
Oh, a motion.
I just closed it.
We've closed it.
Okay,
closed the
okay,
meeting.
all right. Sorry.
Can I have a motion to approve this special permit?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Just so we're clear, it's an LPOD.
Right,
Right.
right, a special permit
Right.
for the LPOD.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Jennifer, what am I doing wrong?
You're great.
Stop me if I'm wandering off the reservation. So we have a motion and a second to approve the special permit of the LPOD. Is there any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. All opposed? 1. The special permit is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. thank you for sticking around for 2 hours for. The last item on the agenda is the update on Phil Arnold's fourth draft, reference to the fourth draft of his ADU draft. Is Phil with us? I can't tell. Is he on the Zoom? Can you tell, Kate? Yeah, I wouldn't blame him. Is there a great rush to get this done tonight? No. Let's defer it to the next meeting.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
I don't hear any opposition.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, there was a quick second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Bill?